Today we'll be looking at the properties of algebra. They include the properties of arithmetic, the properties of equalities, and the properties of inequalities. So let's review the arithmetic properties: commutative, associative, distributive, identity, and inverse. The commutative property of addition and multiplication says that when we add numbers together or multiply numbers together, the order doesn't matter. The associative property of addition and multiplication says that when we add numbers together or multiply numbers together, how we group those numbers doesn't matter. The additive identity states that when we add 0 to a number, we get that number. The multiplicative identity states that when we multiply a number by 1, we get that number. The additive inverse says that when we add the opposite to a number, we get 0. And the multiplicative inverse states that when we multiply by the reciprocal, we get 1. The multiplicative property of 0 states that when we multiply a number by 0, we get 0. And the distributive property says that multiplying a number by a group of numbers added together is the same as multiplying each separately. So those are arithmetic properties: commutative, associative, distributive, identity, inverse, and multiplicative property of 0. Now let's look at the 5 properties of equalities. We have substitution property, the addition, subtraction, and multiplication and division properties of equalities. The substitution of a property of equality is combining like terms. An example of this is 2x plus 4x plus 8 equals 6x plus 8. This is not the addition property, but we combine like terms. The addition property of equality says that we can add the same value to both sides of an equation. So 2x minus 6 equals 10. We add 6 to both sides. That's the addition property of equality. The subtraction property of equality says that we can subtract the same value from both sides of an equation. 2x plus 6 equals 10. We can subtract 6 from both sides. The multiplication property of equality states that we can multiply an equation by the same number on both sides. So here we have 2x plus 6 divided by 3 equals 10. Using this property, we can multiply each side by 3. And the division property of equality says that we can divide an equation by the same value. So 2x equals 10 can be divided each side by 2. So now let's look at the 4 properties of inequalities: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. They're very similar to the properties of equalities. The only difference, instead of using an equal sign, we use an inequality sign. The first property is the addition property of inequality, and that states that we can add the same value to both sides of an inequality. So 2x minus 6 is greater than 10. We can add 6 to both sides. The subtraction property of inequality states that we can subtract the same value from both sides. So 2x plus 6 is greater than 10. We can subtract 6 from both sides. The multiplication property of inequality says that we can multiply both sides of an inequality with the same number. So 2x plus 6 divided by 3 is less than or equal to 10. We can multiply both sides of this inequality by 3. And the division property of inequality states that we can divide both sides of an inequality by the same number. 2x is greater than or equal to 10. We can divide each side by 2 using this property. So that seems like a lot of properties, but let's think about them, how we can remember them. The substitution property is when we combine like terms. And when we have the addition, subtraction, multiplication, division properties of equality using an equal sign and the properties of inequality using inequality signs, we do the same operation to both sides of the equation. And those are algebraic properties.